Good afternoon, everybody, and welcome to the June 13th Governance and Priorities Committee meeting. I'd like to first recognize that we are on the traditional territory of the Snuneymuxw First Nation. Our clerk today is Ms. Sheila Gurry. Today's Governance and Priorities Committee meeting will be held in accordance with the Community Charter and Council Procedure Bylaw 2018, number 7272. The question period sign-up sheet is on the table by the double doors to my left for agenda items only, please. If during the meeting any members of the gallery has a question regarding an agenda item, please write down your name and the agenda item on the sheet. Members for this meeting have been granted the authority to join electronically, and I see Councillors Bonner, Brown, and Hemmons all joining us via Zoom. The first item on the agenda is the introduction of late items. And Ms. Gurry, we have none?
That's correct, Chair.
Thank you very much. So we will next ask for a motion for adoption of the agenda. Mayor Krogh and Councillor Armstrong seconding. Thank you. All in favor? Any opposed? Carried. Thank you. Motion for adoption of minutes as circulated, those from the meeting of May 9th, 2022. Mayor Krogh making the motion, seconded by Councillor Martman. Thank you. All in favor? Any opposed? Carried. Thank you very much. And we move into item number 5, which is agenda planning. Governance and Priorities Committee agenda planning, to be introduced by Ms. Gurry, Director of Legislative Services. Ms. Gurry.
Thank you, Chair. So in your agenda is the agenda planning document for the meetings throughout the summer. I believe we have June and July listed for potential topics for consideration. In June, we have affordable housing coming to the next GPC, June 27th. Today, we have transportation and pedestrian allocation of unallocated funds. And in July is the street entertainers bylaw as well as the noise bylaw for your consideration. And those came from Council's priority list of items that they wish to see discussed at future GPCs. The other items, topics to be, with dates to be determined, the topics, one of them, the 24-hour parking, is coming to an agenda soon, as well the other items are being dealt with in possibly different formats, either a different committee type meeting or a council meeting. So if council wishes to add anything to this GPC agenda planning document or discuss any of the items noted on page 13 to 18 of your original agenda package, now would be the appropriate time.
Thank you, Ms. Gurry. Councillor Bonner, go ahead.
Thank you, Chair. I was wondering if it's possible to, we had this conversation a little while ago regarding question of working with Fortis and working with new connections into buildings and that sort of thing. And there's a low carbon energy systems bylaw that a number of municipalities have been adopting. And I was wondering if that was something we could have a conversation about in the future.
Chair, I can attempt to answer that, and if not, I have Mr. Sims here that possibly could help. Mr. Lindsay's not available today. And since this stemmed, I believe, from the Reimagine process and the city plan, I'm not sure of the timing of when that could be looked at, but we could definitely have that added to the list for consideration and or bring you back a good way to have that discussion in the future. I'm not sure if that's part of the action items coming out of the city plan or not. And not having Mr. Lindsay here right now, I'm not sure if Mr. Sims could add anything more. No, he's shaking his head. So I'm all you got. So I can definitely get back to you and bring that to the next GPC for an update as to when and how that would be best discussed.
Okay, thanks. Much appreciated.
No problem.
Thanks, Councillor Bonner. Councillors, any other comments or questions regarding this topic on agenda planning? I am seeing none, so thank you, Ms. Gurry. We'll move on. And that brings us to reports, and today we are dealing with community wellness / livability. We have a couple of reports, and Mr. Sims is going to be the point man on this. So first of all, developing of a transportation memorandum of understanding. Mr. Sims.
Thank you, Chair. Appreciate it. And I also appreciate that you've worn your tie clip of a slide rule as this heritage slide rule in a nod to the engineering heavy agenda you have in front of you today. That's much appreciated. Essentially, this first report is a positive step for Council, suggesting that Council enter into a memorandum of understanding with BC Transit, the Regional District of Nanaimo, and Ministry of Transportation and Infrastructure. Mr. Rose and Mr. Marshall from the Regional District Transit side of things are both here to answer questions or to review the report if you have any questions.
Thank you, Mr. Sims. So we do have a recommendation, but I don't know if there might be questions or comments before we move to that. I am not seeing anybody showing up on my screen. Councillor Armstrong.
I just want to move the recommendation, get it on the floor.
Making the motion of the staff recommendation, seconded by Councillor Martman. Any discussion, councillors? Yes, please.
Yeah, I just think it's a good plan. I'd like to move it forward. I think we had robust discussion at the RDN, which other than Councillor Turley, we're all available for. So I think it's a great plan to do.
Thank you very much, Councillor Armstrong. So seeing no other hands, I will call the question on this recommendation. All in favor, please. And any opposed? Seeing none, that carries. Thank you very much. And our second report deals with allocation of pedestrian unallocated funding. Again, it's to be introduced by Mr. Sims. And just before you start, Mr. Sims, am I correct in understanding, number one, you'll be introducing Ms. Thomas, and secondly, that this deals with basically funding over and above which was already allocated for the coming year? Am I correct there?
Mr. Chair, thanks. Correct on the first one, and on the second point, perhaps some clarity would be helpful. So, as it notes in the report, the funding traditionally has been about $300,000 per year. In 2021, and then again in 2022, Council allocated an additional amount for pedestrian improvements, and up to $1 million for both of those 2 years. And so it gets confusing because we're talking about the budget year 2022. Now we have this pot of money to allocate out to various projects. Similarly, when we were before you in April, we had the 2021 reporting on the projects, the status of the project. So the $1 million that was allocated in 2021 was reported out at that meeting as well. We added in the layer of, the 2022 funding. So essentially today we're dealing with the 2022 funding, which is not yet specifically allocated to projects. As you likely recall, does that answer the question, Chair?
Yes, it does.
Okay, thanks. As you likely recall, we were in front of you with 4 suggested ideas of how we could allocate out that 2022 funding. There was some enthusiasm for 1 or 2 of the ideas and not so much from the committee on some of the others. And so staff have taken that feedback and sort of come back to you now with an update and some proposed allocations. So essentially we've gone from a pilot project on speed reduction as an example to hearing loud and clear that Council wished to focus purely on improvements, physical improvements. So that's before you today. I think that it's presented as a bit of a menu, but Ms. Thomas can walk you through that. And of course, we're happy to have the discussion, and this is the reason it's at a GPC, is to have that fulsome discussion. Thank you, Chair.
Thank you, Mr. Sims, for that clarification. So we'll turn things over to Ms. Thomas. Always a pleasure, and please go ahead.
Thank you, Mr. Chair. Thank you, Mr. Sims. So as Mr. Sims said, we met with you in April, and went away and retooled some of our projects, and so I'm bringing forward a suite of options for your consideration and recommendations. So we're proposing for this year's $1 million the Trans-Canada Highway improvements from Cranberry to Mackay, and that's a partnership with the Ministry of Transportation. We're looking at the traditional improvements of crosswalks, the flashing beacons, sidewalks, and traffic calming projects. Specifically, the crosswalk projects, we use our new pedestrian tool, safety tool. So the Trans-Canada Highway project is on the Trans-Canada Highway from Cranberry to Mackay. It will involve 2 intersections, 2 signal improvements, traffic signal retimings, extending the northbound left turn lanes at both signals, constructing a sidewalk, and a southbound deceleration lane. And if I missed anything, I don't think so. Mr. Chair, I'm happy to take questions during the presentation if folks have them. So this project is only at the conceptual stage, and we would finalize the detailed design and come back with an improved cost estimate if necessary. So, thank you.
Mayor Krog has a question.
Thank you very much, Chair, and appreciate the offer to ask questions during the process. An inquiry from a voter here in Nanaimo, the bottom of page 23, the $350,000 estimate is anticipated to cover the engineering fees for the design of the project and the city's sidewalk construction. Question, why are pedestrians having to pay for the design costs of a project, some of which clearly relates to vehicle transportation improvements, i.e. de-acceleration lanes, longer turn lanes, better timing, etc.?
Through the chair, through to your worship. Yes, that's a good point. And this project is near and dear to the city's heart. We would like to see these improvements as well. The South End residents are keen on seeing improvements to their vehicular movements. And this was the way to get this project moving forward, was to partner with the Ministry of Transportation on doing this. Yeah, I apologize. I don't have a better answer than that. It was in our best interest to keep this project going forward. Mr. Sims maybe has some words for you.
Mr. Chair, this is really intended to be a cost share project with the Ministry of Transportation. So this is the city's portion, attributed to pedestrian improvements, which may or may not, and some of the design and supporting ministry as they work through some of the signal timing, but certainly the work on the highway itself will be part of the Ministry of Transportation costs.
If I may, Chair, then as I take it as what I assume to be the case. We're all throwing money into this, and you can't separate it out particularly well as to who's paying for what, but there's going to be a total cost, and we're paying a portion, and we get benefits for pedestrians and vehicles as well, and it makes sense to do it as a project, correct? Yeah. Thank you. Thank you, Chair.
Thank you. I have Councillor Turley next.
Thank you, Chair. Through you to Ms. Thomas or Mr. Sims. So you answered my first question, which was who's paying for the balance, so the Ministry of Transportation. I guess my question is the $350,000, does that include the construction of the sidewalk, or is that the city's share of the whole project?
Through the chair to Councillor Turley. So the $350,000 is our estimate of the engineering design fees as well as our sidewalk.
Okay, thank you.
That's not the total project cost.
No, was a hell of a deal, it was.
Yeah.
Thank you, and I see Councillor Hemmons with her hand up. Go ahead, please.
Thank you, Chair. I'm wondering if staff can give us an indication of the entire cost of the project, recognizing it's early, but I'm here. Councillor Turley said that the ministry is picking up the balance, but that's not clear to me. Can I have a breakdown of what is ours and what would typically be theirs?
Mr. Chair, I missed the tail end of Councillor Hammond's question.
Yes, Councillor Hemmons, we had a little bit of difficulty hearing just the last bit of your question. If you wouldn't mind repeating it.
Sure. I'm curious if I can have an estimate of the entire project cost. Ballpark.
So at this point, Mr. Chair, the anticipated cost is approximately $550,000. The ministry has earmarked $200,000 in this fiscal year, which for them goes to March 31st of 2023. So the total that we have on the books so far is $550,000
Thank you.
Thank you. And Councillor Bonner, go ahead.
Thank you, Chair. It sort of raises more questions for me now. It's my understanding, because this is money that's out of the pedestrian improvements and active transportation funding, that the 350,000 is just to pay for the sidewalk and the design for the sidewalk, and then for 200,000, Modi's going to do all of the rest. Seems like an awful lot of work for just $200,000.
Ms. Thomas.
Through the chair, Councillor Bonner, you were right. We are being optimistic. These cost estimates were developed before we knew what the current market conditions are, so we may have to adjust. At this point, we are getting started, and we will retool as we go.
If I may ask one more question, Chair, is if we don't participate in building of the sidewalk, does this whole project go away, or will Moti continue to do the slowing lanes and doing all the work that we've requested as part of the increase in the flow of traffic in that area?
Mr. Chair, I'm guessing a little bit here, Councillor Bonner. I would say we are the impetus behind it. Likely it would go away.
Thank you.
Thanks, Councillor Bonner. I appreciate the question and really enjoy listening to your voice today. But I urge you not to overstrain it with too many questions.
Thank you, Chair. This is my FM late night voice from 101 C-Hub. Thanks.
All right. I have Councillor Armstrong and Councillor Brown. Councillor Armstrong, go ahead.
Thank you. This is really important to me because I think this is an area that is really underserviced. I know that kids don't want to walk. Nobody wants to walk there because of the dangers. It's one of our highest accident areas in the whole city. I think we're at 140 accidents there now this year, or in the last 3 years. So I think it's really important that we go ahead with this. I think we haven't spent much money on any pedestrian improvements out there. So for me, this is a strong priority. Thank you.
Thank you, Councillor Armstrong. And Councillor Brown.
Thank you, Chair. Through you to staff. What is the total cost estimate for the design portion of the sidewalk and the estimated cost of putting in the sidewalk?
Ms. Thomas, able to answer that?
Mr. Chair, through to Councillor Brown, that's a little bit hard to separate out because we asked for a cost estimate from the consultant for the whole conceptual design. So the conceptual design includes all of these items. If possible, I can go away and look at those numbers separately and bring information back.
Do we have a rough idea?
Well, our portion is 350, and that includes the total package for the design and the money for the sidewalk. So I apologize, I don't have that breakdown in my head.
Yeah, thanks.
Thank you. I'm not seeing any other questions at this point, Ms. Thomas, so if you'd like to proceed, go ahead.
I'm not sure, Chair, if Councillor Hemmons, oh, she's gone. Her hand was up there.
Oh, did I miss something, Councillor Hemmons? Nope, she's good. All right, thank you.
Thank you, Mr. Chair. So we have 8 crosswalks for consideration. These were the top 8 taken out of our new pedestrian safety tool, and minus crosswalks that are under consideration for capital projects and various other exclusions. So I'm going to speak to each of them a little bit, if you don't mind. Next slide, please, sir. So the crosswalk with the highest points was Wakasai at Foster, and this is near NDSS. It has transit stops, heavy student usage, and vehicle congestion at the opening and closing of the day. The next safety feature that can be added here would be a half signal, and because of the cost, we will be recommending that that be put into the capital program. Next slide, please. Thank you. So this crossing is Departure Bay at Barons Road. It's near Wellington School. It had 57 points. The RRFB that's here is at the end of its functional lifespan. There's transit stops. There's a wide crossing with a median here. The speed limit is 50K, and there's heavy student usage. So we're recommending an upgrade to the RRFB, and a median installation, which would give pedestrians a refuge. Crossing number 3, this is close to us at Sark. Fitzwilliam at Selby. This is within the Old City Quarter and part of the downtown urban center. It's currently marked with paint and signs, and there's a warning sign in the middle of the road asking drivers to yield to pedestrians, reminding them. It's within a 50K posted speed. The 57 points, we're believing that an RRFB at this location would improve the pedestrian crossing experience. Crossing number 4, we're out at the north end near Costco. This is Applecross Road at Calinda, and you can see it's a fairly wide crossing distance. It's marked with paint and signs, so the next step would be a flashing beacon, and it's within a 50 km/h posted speed limit. Crossings 5 and 6. Crossing number 5 is at our Ice Center Aquatic Center on 3rd. This is well used by pedestrians. It has we've done the speed and volume study here, and we know there's higher volumes of speeds in vehicles, a lot of vehicles and higher speeds. And these flashing beacons were one of the early ones we installed, so they are at the end of their functional life. This one, sorry, can we go back to 6? Thank you. So this is the trail crossing on 3rd, right adjacent to the Ice Center and the Aquatic Center. This is also at the end of its functional life. These 2 crossings would benefit from half signals, and so we are recommending that the 2 crossings, 5 and 6, be converted to a capital project. Crossing number 7 is on Franklin at Selby, and this is within the urban center. It has a posted speed of 50K and a wide crossing distance. So we're recommending some concrete works here with bump outs of the sidewalks to shorten the crossing distance as a first step. And number 8 on our list is Townsite Road at Holly Avenue. This crossing is a connection of the E&N Trail. It's well used by cyclists, and I was happy to capture some cyclists using it when I was there. The recommendations for this crossing would be shortening the crossing distance and an RRFB. So that's all the crossings. Mr. Chair, are there any questions around the crossings?
I see Councillors Turley and Geselbrock so far. Councillor Turley, go ahead.
Thank you, Chair. Through you to, I have about 3 questions, if you don't mind. First of all, not being a trained engineer, I have no idea what was the term, a double signal?
Half signal?
What's it?
Half signal?
Half signal. I'm going the wrong way, sorry. What is the difference between that and the flashing yellow lights that are at those intersections now?
Through Mr. Chair, Councillor Turley. The half signal is 3 colors, so it has red, yellow, and green, and a pedestrian or a cyclist pushes the button and they actually stop traffic with a red light, as opposed to the rectangular rapid flashing beacons, which are just flashing yellows.
Okay, so, and it makes a huge difference in traffic obedience, having that? Okay. The other question I have, and this goes back to my bugaboo about near the end of his life. The crosswalk on the across from the aquatic center going over to the NIC facility, I'm guessing was probably put in there around 2001-ish. I don't know if that's pretty close. And so I guess my question is these types of lights, what is their, if it's near the end of his life, what is the actual expected life expectancy of these approximately? Is it 20 years or more? Or?
It's actually less, Councillor Turley. We don't generally get that much out of these things. These 2 have been refurbished, so bits and pieces have been replaced. While I've been working here, the things have been fixed and jury-rigged together and held together, rewired and fixed. Okay. So bits and pieces wear out parts of them faster than others. Like the buttons often need replacing because they're vandalized or abused. And these RFBs don't have brains in the same way controllers do, but the wires wear out and the bases wear out. They rust, they rot. And so, yeah,
So I've stood up a hell of a lot better than they do, right? Sorry. The other question I have is to do with the one on Departure Bay at Barron's. And I was speaking to a person who resides in that area, and they have trouble at specific times turning left off of Wessel Way onto Departure Bay to get onto 19A. Is there any opportunity for, instead of having that crosswalk at Barron's, to have it actually at Wessel Way on it'll be the north side of Wessel Way, because there's the bus stop right there. And it would potentially, because people, if the light is flashing, they're not supposed to be parking in front of the through street. That might ease some of the traffic issues
Good
right
question.
there. And I don't know if there would be a huge extra expense to do that if you're replacing it anyway or
We can-
not, but
Yeah, we
it
can
might solve
definitely
another
look into
problem.
that. Yeah.
Okay, thank
Happy
you.
to look into that. Yeah.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Thank you. Councillor Geselbrock is next.
Thank you, Chair. I just have a question about the pedestrian crossings on Bruce. Are those already slated to be done with the last funding? Okay, perfect.
Through the chair to Councillor Geselbrock. Yes. Are you asking about Bruce and Albion?
Yeah, Bruce and Albion, and was there one more on there? And 6, yeah.
Yes. So those were from last year's funding. Bruce and Albion has started the contractors on board and has mobilized and started arranging subs and the like. Those projects are underway for last year's funding.
Wonderful, thank you.
Okay. Thank you.
Thank you. Councillor Brown is next, followed by Councillor Armstrong.
Thank you, Chair. I have a question too regarding infrastructure that's sort of at the end of life. And the reason I'm asking is, I think the intention of these funds was really to start to overcome some of the pedestrian infrastructure deficit throughout the city. So when an existing pedestrian-controlled intersection with the lights has reached its end of life, if this funding wasn't available, how would it normally have been? How would that asset have been replaced?
Mr. Chair, I'd like to direct that to Mr. Sims and Mr. Rose, who have some more history with the city and asset management, if I may.
Through the chair, we do currently have operational funds to address infrastructure that's failed, like beacons and signals and things of that nature. It is a very limited pot, and I think that the locations we're talking about today are opportunities to renew and improve on. So as Wassel Way is an example, we will be renewing that, but also creating a more comfortable crossing, more of a 2-stage crossing, I believe was our intent, but we can revisit the geometrics of that and the design of that as we go forward. So understanding that this really is intended to expand our infrastructure, but we are seeing opportunities to sort of do a bit of both at the same time, and thought it was a good way forward. But we are open to guidance and preference in a different direction.
So just to follow up, Chair, if I'm understanding this correctly, if there is existing infrastructure that is proposed to be replaced here, but there's the opportunity to put in better infrastructure, that's what is going to happen?
That's correct, and I also meant to mention that the beacons that are available today are vastly superior than the ones that are out there right now. I don't know if anybody's had an opportunity to sort of see the difference between the ones on 5th by University Village versus the sort of Gen 1 round ones. They're sort of the slow, methodical beacon versus the really intense rapid fire. And so as part of that renewal, we are creating a more advanced crossing system as well.
Thanks, Mr. Rose.
Thank you. Councillor Armstrong, followed by Councillor Bonner.
Yeah, my question is regards to the knick-knack and the second signal, or half signal, sorry. How would that impact the parkway? Because already now we see backups between 8:30 and 9 when that crosswalk button is going. Would that add an even greater impact, and what would Modi's reply be to that?
Through the chair to Councillor Armstrong, the lovely advantage of using half signals is that they have really smart controller brains, and we would be able to synchronize them so to minimize delays for cars. So that is one of the advantages of using that system.
So it would actually lessen the impact then on the parkway and make that less dangerous when they're turning in, blocking the parkway.
The delays at the parkway, we can discuss the signal timings with the Ministry of Transportation, and we can work with them on that.
Yeah, it's just that if you come in here in the morning, people block the whole intersection trying to get through because the crosswalk's dinged and there's such a volume of traffic. So that was just my concern. So if you could synchronize it with the lights, that would probably make it a lot safer for everybody. Thank you.
Thank you. And Councillor Bonner.
Thank you, Chair. Similar to Councillor Brown's concerns about just replacing existing infrastructure instead of adding to it, I do have a concern about that. I was wondering if you could talk a little bit about the numbering system. If I were to explain to anybody out in the public how that came about, like in terms of the transparency of how these numbers came to be. What are they? What do they signify? Where can I see them? How do we make decisions on them? That sort of thing.
Through the chair.
Ms. Thomas, can you explain the rationale and if that is available?
Councillor, thank you, Mr. Chair. Councillor Bonner, are we talking about the scoring system?
Yes, that's
Yes.
correct.
Yes.
Like, where did that come from, and how is it looked at?
So the scoring system was the output from our new pedestrian prioritization tool, and it's an algorithm that's based on traffic volumes and speeds, proximity to transit, numbers of people crossing, proximity to schools, a whole variety of things, and then the algorithm bundles it all together and spits out a number. The number that's spit out doesn't tell us what to do, it just gives us a priority.
Okay, if I could then ask about Applecross. I did some measurements of, closest buildings, closest residents, that sort of thing. The closest residents that would probably use that crosswalk is over 300 meters away. And the vast majority of commercial properties in that area are you got to drive to because they have a whole bunch of stuff you got to throw into a car. So I'm wondering how that one got up as high as it did on this number. Like I don't see it as being a very busy place, and also the entire road itself isn't really laid out for pedestrians to cross. So I would imagine that a lot of them are just crossing where they need to cross, as opposed to walking considerably out of the way to cross where there's a crosswalk.
Mr. Chair,
Ms. Thomas?
Councillor Bonner, are you asking me a question? I apologize.
Yeah, like how did I'm just trying to figure out how Applecross got up there. Like, is it because there's a lot of people using that crossing, or is it because there's too many cars, or the cars are going fast? It just doesn't seem a good place that I think a lot of pedestrians would be using.
Yeah, I do understand your point. So we are seeing a lot of development in that area, densification. The plan for that urban node is to have high-rise towers and a lot of people. So, yeah, number 4. Thank you. So looking at the picture on the screen, the development to the right-hand side there is going to be dense urban development with multi-story, multi-family type of residential developments. So we would like to encourage people. If we're not seeing people crossing there now, we know that they will be, and we'd like them to be. And the algorithm spit this one out. We do see a wide crossing distance. We know that the traffic volumes there are considerable, the speeds are high, and the next step in improving the pedestrian experience there is to add a flashing beacon. I don't know how else to address this. We're trying to shift the needle in getting people to walk, and we can only do that by improving the crossing experience.
Oh, I'm 100% behind you on that one. I just don't know if there's enough pedestrians needing the experience there, and whether or not that money, which is what we have to decide today, would be better off used at some of the other ones that we're not necessarily seeing on the screen. I also do, and we'll talk about this later, okay, that's all the questions I had for now. If I might just take an opportunity to thank Mr. Sims. I don't know when I'll be able to do this. Sir, your water here tastes fabulous. Had some in Regina, didn't like it at all. So anyway, kudos from the water.
Thank you. Councillor Armstrong, did you have something to add? Mayor Krogh, and I think Mr. Rosen also has something. No? Mayor Krogh, go ahead.
Thank you very much. I'm not a frequent Costco shopper, and I try to avoid malls where I can, but my response to Councillor Bonner's questions about this and looking at the volume of people who live in that area, my guess is that's a pretty common route to get to Woodgrove Mall, particularly for young people who don't own cars and others. It seems to me that is probably the most direct crosswalk from all of those folks who live near the RDN, et cetera. So I think actually, in fairness, I appreciate the concerns that Councillor Bonner's raised, but my suspicion is that it's not just a question of anticipated use, it's also a recognition of the volume that already will use that route. They will cut through the large mall area, if you will, development on the corner, past Ricky's, and then head across the highway safely there. So I think it's a reasonable proposal. Thank you.
I see Councillor Bonner's hand is still up. I'm not sure if there was a follow-up. No, it's gone. Councillor Brown, you're next.
Thanks, Chair. Since we're providing input, I guess on these individually, I don't think this is a high-risk one. Spent a good time in this area as a pedestrian, and the Applecross Hammond Bay in general, it's a very high traffic pedestrian use where there's a lot of conflicts. So initially when I saw this, I thought it was actually going to be a proposal to reduce the sort of like a mid-block on Hammond Bay, but then a little more granularity, I realized where it was. So I just stated I won't be supporting this. Thanks.
Thank you, Councillor Brown. If there's no other comments on this section, we'll allow Ms. Thomas to continue. Sidewalks.
Thank you. We're proposing, we looked at three sets of sidewalks this year, and I think the imagery in the presentation here is not as good as the one in your package. So we have three. The first one is Departure Bay Road on the south side from Allen-a-Dale to Wardropper, and that's near Departure Bay Eco School. We presented it previously in the past. It's a fairly expensive project. We're estimating it at $450,000. The second one is Departure Bay Road, and we've done a very tight cost estimate. We have design drawings. And the third one is on 3rd Street. Mr. Rose, thank you. So these are the three locations. The first one is Departure Bay Road near Eco School, $450,000. The second one is $85,000, and that particular one we like because we have it to detailed design and we have good tight cost estimate on it. And it serves a really difficult area that isn't very easily accessible for folks. Third one is the 3rd Street east side from the Rotary House to Jingle Pot Road, and we're estimating that at $240,000. So those are the three sidewalk projects. We'll be recommending number 2. So any questions, Mr. Chair?
Yes, I see Councillor Turley and then Mayor Krog.
Thank you, Chair. Through you to Ms. Thomas. So the second one, I should remember this, but I don't. When they get to the north end of the proposed sidewalk, north of the co-op, and they cross across the sidewalk there, 2 of them, or 2 crosswalks, I seem to recall there is a sidewalk that then takes you farther down to the end of the mall, right? Or the plaza.
Inside the plaza, yes. Well, we have a sidewalk too on Departure Bay Road, yes.
Yeah, that's what I was wondering, yeah. Okay, thank you.
Yes.
Mayor Krog.
Thank you very much, Chair, and through you to Ms. Thomas. I appreciate the comments about the $450,000 for the Allen-a-Dale to Wardropper Park and Departure Bay Road, but even at that strikes me as a lot of money for what appears to be a relatively short piece of sidewalk. Is there some expropriation involved as well in order to see, or have we got the quoting land in the right-of-way already?
Through the chair to your worship. The difficulty there is the topography. So the shape of the cross-section through there would be difficult to construct. So it's topographically related. I don't think we need property. We'd have to confirm that for you. But yeah, it's just an expensive area to construct because of the topography.
Okay, thank you.
Thank you. Cheryl, Councillor Armstrong, pardon me.
Oh, thank you. Just going back to the Departure Bay Road South Side, the 450,000, like, I know it's a lot of money, but we have to start doing these projects for the kids. Like, I mean, that's a very unsafe road. We know it's a very busy road. People speed down that road, irregular business. You even have it that parents will not let their kids walk to school there. And if we're trying to get kids and parents walking, they need a sidewalk. So for me, that's very important there. And I understand the needs for all of them, but for me, I really believe we should be looking at the ones for the schools so that we provide more safety for the kids. Thank you.
Thank you. Council, any other comments or questions on this portion? Seeing none, Ms. Thomas. Traffic calming.
Thank you, sir. On to the traffic calming projects. So, traffic calming projects. We have done 3 pilot projects. Lost Lake Road, Georgia Avenue Greenway, and the Departure Bay Road at the beach. All of these projects had some success and could use some tweaking, better designs, and final installations. So in your package, there are speeds, before and after speeds. Oh yeah, they're visible on screen. Okay. So you can see we had some success. The pink circles are the after speeds, and where we had really hard traffic calming, I say hard, I mean concrete stuff, at the east end of Lost Lake Road, we saw a substantial decrease in speeds. George Avenue Greenway, we had some success with traffic calming through here. The speed in front of the school is still 45 km/h, and the speed there is 30, posted at 30. So we had some success at George Avenue, but not quite as much as we'd like to see. And Departure Bay Beach, we have had some success again, but look at the 2020 numbers were posted speed limit of 40, and we had 54 km/h in both directions. So all of these projects would benefit from additional funding, a little bit of a redesign, and permanent installations. So we're proposing that these projects be furthered, as well as, oh, what's next on the list? Do you want to talk about, can you go to the next slide? Thank you. So the next in queue are Bradley Extension and Mountain Vista. With additional funding, we can go to public consultation and design. And then after that point, we would come back to council for additional consideration. So, in summary, we're suggesting the 3 half signals be moved to the capital program, the Trans-Canada Highway Corridor improvements be moved forward, improve 5 crosswalks, construct 1 sidewalk, and allocate the remainder to the traffic calming IO. And that should add up to $1 million, subject to council's input.
Thank you, Ms. Thomas. I see a couple of speakers wishing to ask questions or make comments. Councillor Armstrong, did you have something? Thank you. Councillor Martman, go ahead, please.
Thank you. And thank you for the presentation and this opportunity to make decisions. I'm wondering under option A, which it says part of that would be the traffic calming, 165,000. Since the Departure Bay Beach recommendation there in the summary says it would be 165,000, raising the 50,000 to 215, would that be where the traffic calming would be allocated to? Because we wouldn't be able to do any of the others then.
Through the chair to Councillor Martman, I apologize. Can you go through that again and go slower because I missed exactly what you said? Okay.
I'm sorry.
Ask me about the money again, please.
In the summary.
Yes.
So it was saying calming allocation of 165,000 in option A.
Yes.
So I'm wondering if that would be dedicated to Departure Bay, or is that what you were thinking?
That would allow us to do public consultation on and design on, let's see, the 3 traffic calming projects that we already have in hand, as well as move the others forward. So Lost Lake Road, we could finalize, Departure Bay Beach, and Georgia.
So if council was willing, would we not be able to say, take that 165,000 and apply it to Departure Bay Beach project? put that whole amount into it, from increasing it from 50 to 215?
I'm sure that would be a lot of money. I don't think we need all of that, but
Okay,
that would be council's prerogative, and we would give you back the extra.
thank you.
I feel like Mr. Rose would like to say something, Mr. Chair.
Certainly, Mr. Rose, go ahead.
Sorry, through the chair, I just wanted to clarify that discussion. So the question was, could council allocate $165,000 to Departure Bay only? And I think what Ms. Thomas has proposed is $165,000 to Lost Lake, Departure Bay, and Georgia to achieve all three of them.
Will it actually achieve all three? Because you had 165,000 down. Needed for Departure Bay only. So would we be able to do all three for 165?
Through the chair, I think that $165,000 should give us the ability to take a next step with all of them. I think during our previous conversations regarding traffic calming, we always want to take steps forward without trying to overstep too much. So I'll let Ms. Thomas
so
comment
it would
on
be
the numbers.
applied to all three in planning?
Yes.
Okay.
So, Council, there is and I recognize that Councillor Brown is wishing to speak. Just before I go to him, we have a recommendation which has a number of components to it, and I'm sensing this could become a little bit unwieldy. So I look to Ms. Gurry for suggestions if we want to do these in some way in seriatim, or how we should best approach this in terms of efficiency. Ms. Gurry, any suggestions?
Yes, thank you, Chair. I was just looking at that and looking under option A, which looks to be on page 30 of your original agenda or page 9 of the staff report. And looking at option A, option B, option C, option D, I believe that the staff recommendation, option 1, is that council allocate $1 million of pedestrian unallocated funding to the projects listed under option A. However, if council doesn't wish to support all of those in option A or all of those in option B, C, or D, and would like to pick and choose, I think that we will need to maybe remove the $1 million amount and have it up to the million, because I think if you don't include some, you'll be under that $1 million funding. And I would look to Mr. Rose, Ms. Thompson, and Mr. Sims for some assistance in that. But I do believe you can pick and choose, and I think there might be some members of the committee that wish to do that. So I can't help right now until I see kind of where you're going, but I do kind of see the conundrum we're about to get into.
All right, I see Councillor Brown and then Councillor Armstrong and Geselbrecht also wish to make comment. Can I ask that we get those comments and then we can look at motions following that? I'll come back to anybody that wishes to make a motion. Councillor Brown, you're first.
Thanks, Chair. I'm seeking similar clarity on the line of questioning of Councillor Markman. If I'm understanding the previous comments, essentially what's being proposed for traffic calming in any of the options to varying degrees of cost is just more planning.
Ms. Thomas?
Through the chair. So the intent with reallocating the money to the traffic calming IO is to give us some flexibility around that, to finish Lost Lake Road first, and then do Georgia, and then do Departure Bay Beach, using the funding as far as it will take us. And I'm now coming to understand what Councillor Martman was asking me. So yes, we don't have a specific cost for each of those projects quite yet. With the current market conditions and workload levels, it's hard for us to estimate how far the 215 will take us, but I feel confident we would be able to finish at least Lost Lake Road and Georgia Avenue, and possibly all the way down through Departure Bay Beach, unless council gives us advice that they want it done in a different order. So the intent of putting that money together into one pot gives us flexibility to get the public consultation done and finalize the designs in the order
Okay, so
that council would like.
Okay, sorry, I'm still seeking additional clarity. When you use the term finished, are we talking infrastructure on the ground?
Correct, yes. Go through public consultation, finalize the design, and build something.
Okay, thank you so much.
Thank you. Councillor Armstrong.
Just a comment on Departure Bay, because what I find interesting, no traffic comment in 2018, and it was the lowest speed of all. So now, once we put in traffic comment, our speed limits went up to 56 and 54. Is there any rationale for that? Like, you know, it just doesn't make sense to me that as soon as we put in traffic calming, our speeds accelerated, yet before there was no traffic calming and our speeds were at 49.
Through the chair to Councillor Armstrong, I do believe there was a 40 km/h posted speed.
Pardon?
There was a 40 km/h posted speed that year, but I.
No, there
This
wasn't.
is awful to say, but I wasn't here then. Maybe we
No,
can
it was
ask
50
Mr. Rose.
kilometers.
Was there traffic calming in 2018?
Mr. Rose.
Through the chair, that could have been the first year that we did the 40-kilometer speed limit reduction. I can't say for certain without going back and looking at our files.
But we did
do incremental steps. We did the speed limit reduction, then we added some, and then we added some more.
But we still did that in 2019-20, the 40 kilometer, yet the speeds went up. So I just, like, I'm not a huge fan of some of that in those areas. I think the traffic itself slows everybody down in the summer, that I think for me, it's a waste of money that could be used elsewhere when we don't even see the stats to support traffic calming. Thank you.
And Councillor Geselbrandt.
Thanks, Chair. Through you, I just have a question. The sidewalk beside Wardrober Park, I think that's, you know, highly used elementary school kids going through there, and I remember being at a school event, that was a major issue for them, that one location. It's not cheap at $450K. When would be the next opportunity for that chunk to get done if we don't lump it into this? Does it require us to allocate funding to it, or will eventually we'll get to it with our other capital streams? Yep.
Through the chair, so this is a location which we do have a future utility upgrade. I can't remember what year it is in our plan right now, but that would be the opportunity to have a larger scale project, which often gets better dollars usage. And so we have gone out already with the school, working with the school district, and placed the delineators to help define the walking area, which we've received a lot of positive feedback. In fact, we're extending the last little bit to the next park access. And so this project will come forward. It's just a question of, do we expedite it or do we wait and do it concurrent with other utility projects?
Great. Just a point of clarity. So right now it's got kind of like the plastic posts up along the side?
Yeah, so similar to 7th Street, it's got the 1.2 meter white candlesticks with the green ribbons on them that are reflective.
Okay, great. That's good to hear. Thanks.
Thank you. So, Council, I think it's time that we considered a recommendation, and we can debate further once something is on the floor. There is a staff recommended option of option A, looking at page 30 on my agenda, and we have other possible options. Mayor Krog.
Thank you, Chair. I'm going to move option A, the staff recommendation.
Option A being moved by Mayor Krog, seconded by Councillor Armstrong. And did you wish to speak to that, Mayor Krog?
Very briefly, I appreciate the concerns around this and the comments, particularly around departure-based school. But I'm considering the volume of people, the number of places, the improvement in crosswalks, which I think are important. We are not going to find a perfect choice. And given that there isn't significant difference in terms of points allocation, really, and conscious of the fact that staff is aware of, well, for instance, Mr. Rose mentioned potential utility upgrades in various areas. There's probably more thinking, and I say this respectfully to staff, there's probably more thinking has gone into these recommendations than can be made apparent in a report that we're trying to deal with in the relatively short period of time that any council gets to deal with recommendations. So I, for one, am going to place my trust in the transportation experts and not what maybe how shall I say, even critical or ordinary citizen instinct. So for what it's worth, I'm going with option A.
Thank you. And I have a speakers list of Councillor Turley, Councillor Brown, I believe was next, Councillor Bonner, and Councillor Armstrong. So Councillor Turley, go ahead, please.
Thank you, Chair, through you to Ms. Thomas. So when we do a sidewalk, like the one by Departure Bay School, and then there's underground works being slated for a few days later, does that sidewalk actually get dug up again, or is it in a different location from where the trench would have to be dug for the upgrades in the installation, in the underground services?
Through the chair to Councillor Turley, we generally don't like to do that. So we like to do the underground first. And if the 450,000 would include whatever underground storm drain is required. I don't know that there's anything else under it there. Mr. Rose can speak to that. Yeah, we would not want to tear up new sidewalk.
Thank you. Yeah. So would it be, is there underground services under the proposed new sidewalk or not?
Through the chair. So the utility work that I'm referring to is actually a sanitary sewer. And so I can't say whether we would or wouldn't disrupt a new sidewalk should we put one in. We would certainly avoid it at all cost, but it would be a lot more economical and easier if we had sort of a blank slate without the sidewalk and we're able to build back from the bottom up.
Good, thank you.
Thank you. Councillor Brown, you're next.
Thanks, Chair. I believe Councillor Bonner was before me.
I'm sorry, I didn't catch that.
Councillor Bonner was before me, but he waved me to go. So I won't be supporting this recommendation. You know, the intention, you know, voting in favor of these funds, for me, the intention really was pedestrian improvements. Despite what I might think about a few of the crosswalk locations and whatnot as part of a package, I don't have too much of an issue. And thank you to Ms. Thomas for clarifying around the traffic calming. But the transit corridor or the Mackey Road area improvements, it's not that I don't think they're needed, but we have a motion around a comprehensive plan for that area. We have continuing work around better connectivity options for the automobile, and undoubtedly those will include pedestrian and cyclist improvements. So to me, this, you know, looking at this project, it really does, I don't think it's going to solve much of the issue it sets out to do, whether for pedestrians or for auto users. And, you know, and without having that costing breakdown, just, you know, I don't think I need to be an engineer to know that there's definitely some details there that, and there's funds that are going to be used for auto-centered portions of that project. And it's not that I disagree with that, but I just don't think those, or it's not that I disagree with that, I just don't think the intentions of these funds were for those type of projects. We got a whole bunch of other pools and minimum funding for very laser-focused pedestrian improvements. You know, we do them part of other projects, that's great, but the intention of these funds is to improve. So this really misses the mark in my mind. It could go a lot further in other places for its true intention. And I really don't think it's solved. You know, in World War II, airplanes kept coming back full of bullet holes. And what they would do is they would put armor where all the bullet holes were and send them back out. Well, it took some genius to come along and say, no, you need to put the armor where the bullet holes are not, because those are the planes not coming back. And so looking at a lot of these crosswalks, they are auto-centric priorities. You know, anyone that spends time on the ground in some of these locations would come up with different locations. So overall, I feel we need to do a lot more work on our prioritization tool and how we are prioritizing pedestrians in the city. Thanks.
Thank you. Councillor Bonner, and I apologize if I had you out of order. Go ahead now, please.
It's quite all right. I don't mind waiting for other councillors. I'm not in favor of this recommendation either. I am in favor of traffic calming for the 165,000 on the 3 areas that we talked about. And I'd certainly like to see those completed. I don't have a problem with installing the sidewalk number 2 on Departure Ray Road at Hunnam Boulevard. Improving the crosswalks, I do have an issue, as I said, with Applecross, but and I think that money would be better spent somewhere else. But I would like to see the TCH corridor improvements done, but I'd rather see it come out of a different fund. And I do know we have other funds that we can draw from, and because I think this is an important project. But this project, from all the complaints that I've seen, have been on getting cars in and out of that area and not getting pedestrians ability to walk down the highway, which it will be important, and I understand that. It's just that I think that funding needs to come from somewhere else. So I think I want most of the above and then a bit more. So if I could say I'm in favor of the last three, but I want the THC coming out of a different fund, which I think I'd be willing to put a motion forward in the event that this fails. Thank you.
Thank you. I have Councillor Armstrong next, followed by Councillor Hemmons.
Thank you. I'm in favor of the motion. I'm very much in favor of the TCH corridor improvement. I know some people feel that it's helping traffic or cars, but by helping cars be safer, it actually makes pedestrians safer as well, because the cars do go up onto those sidewalks. They do go all over the place. So I think having the sidewalk there would be very beneficial, and there isn't one there, so I think it's very important to put a sidewalk in there. I understand more work will be done, but this would be the start of the project, plus it's a partnership with Modi. I agree with the sidewalk install on Departure Bay from Highwood Boulevard, especially as Councillor Martman and I do chair the accessibility committee, and that is a accessibility issue that I think is an easy fix for $85,000. It's one of our cheapest ones, and it's going to make things easier. And I'm supportive of the traffic calming allocation so that you can do more and get more done. So for me, I'm in support of the motion. Thank you.
Thank you. And Councillor Hemmons, go ahead, please.
Thank you, Chair. I'm conflicted because I support 90% of the motion, but the TCH corridor improvements, while I completely agree that they need to be done, I don't think this is the appropriate allocation of those dollars. And I think the traffic calming along Extension Road is probably going to give more to that neighborhood than we would do with this improvement. So it's not that I don't think the improvement is needed. I really like the pedestrian prioritization tool. I like the projects that staff have brought forward, but I struggle, and not because we don't want to do it. If we want to do it, let's do it, but let's find the appropriate funding to do it, because like Councillor Brown said, we have a long list of pedestrian improvements needed in this city. Thank you.
Thank you. And I see Councillor Bonner again.
Thank you, Chair. I'd like to make an amendment to the motion that the TCH program be funded from the Council's Strategic Infrastructure Reserve, if that's possible.
Is there a seconder for that motion? I'm looking to Ms. Gurry just to ensure that that motion is in order.
Chair, through you, I believe with the absence of Ms. Mercer here, to know that there are funds in the Strategic Infrastructure Strategic Initiatives Fund, and I'm sure that there could be, that this would be in order. If there's a seconder, you could make the motion to...
Was seconded.
Yeah.
Thank you. And I did see Councillor Martman seconding that motion, so the amendment is now on the floor, and I would ask speakers to speak just to that amendment regarding the funding source. Councillor Bonner, you're first if you wish to speak.
Thank you, Chair. I just, it's that fund or another fund. I think this is an important project. I think it needs to go forward. I just don't think it's the right fund, right project for this funding. So that's why I put in the amendment. And then I would, later on, if this does pass, we would just add some other items to the $1 million shopping list. Thank you.
Thank you. I have Councillor Brown, Mayor Krogh, and Councillor Armstrong and Martman. I believe in that order. So Councillor Brown, go ahead.
Thanks, Chair. I definitely won't be supporting the amendment. There's a whole host of unfunded rec projects, capital projects that are going to rely on these type of reserve fundings to see them realized. And without having that in hand to know what wouldn't get done, I would encourage council to vote against this amendment. Thank you.
Thank you. Mayor Krog, you're next to the amendment.
Thank you very much, Chair. I'm with Councillor Brown on this one. We're fishing in the dark, so to speak, and moreover, it's obvious that that section of highway is well used by pedestrians coming down Extension Road, headed to the mall, etc. It is the only safe route that I'm aware of to get to the mall from Extension Road. If someone can tell me I'm wrong, great. But on the surface of it, whether it comes out of, I appreciate that some will raise concern, as Councillor Bonner has, that it's not a proper use of pedestrian unallocated funding, but frankly, it is part of a project that contributes to pedestrian safety in a significant way in a highly traveled area that is near a school site as well. With great respect, the last time I checked, kids still wander from schools to malls unless the world has changed since I was young, so I'm not going to support the amendment.
Thank you. Speaking to the amendment, Councillor Armstrong and then Councillor Martman.
Yes, I won't support the amendment either because the $350,000 estimate is actually to cover the engineering fees for the project and the sidewalk construction, and this is pedestrian infrastructure, so I think it is very fitting to take it from this fund. Thank you.
Thank you. And Councillor Martman.
Thank you. And just to speak to it, I guess I had my concerns about this coming out of the pedestrian funding, right? But this is too important an area that has really been neglected for far too long. So although I seconded the amendment, I may not support it.
That's entirely up to you, Councillor Martman. Thank you. Any other speakers on the amendment? And I'm seeing no other hands, so I'm going to call the question on the amendment regarding the funding source. And I will ask all those in favor to please raise their hands. I see Councillor Bonner and those opposed. Councillors Armstrong, Martman, Geselbrecht, Thorpe, Mayor Krog, Councillor Turley, Councillor Hemmons, Councillor Brown. So the amendment is defeated, which brings us back to the original motion on the floor, which was option A. Is there further discussion on this motion? And seeing no further hands coming up, then I will call the question on the original motion, which is the recommended staff option of option A. And I will just comment very quickly that I don't totally agree with everything in this option, but I do support the expertise of staff, as I usually do in these matters. And yes, some of these don't totally relate to pedestrian safety, but I think they all relate in some way to pedestrian safety. And I think they are worth doing, so I will be supporting the motion. So I will call the question after I go to Councillor Hemmons.
Thank you very much, Chair. I just want to clarify something before the vote. If I may ask a question of staff. In the report on page 2 of the actual report, it talks about Bay Street traffic calming, pilot projects for Lost Lake and the Georgia Avenue Greenway. The last sentence of that paragraph states that all of these are unfunded. Can I just have clarification from staff that these projects will, I heard Ms. Thomas explain that we are putting that $165,000 into one fund to hopefully see the realization of all three of those projects. And the reason I ask is because I'm willing to support the TCH corridor improvements as long as it doesn't put those projects at risk, because those projects, in my opinion, are very much about what this funding is for. The Trans-Canada Highway, I can make, I can make it fit, but only if we are going to be actually following through and putting those infrastructure improvements in place for Lost Lake Road, Departure Bay, and Georgia Ave. Thank you.
Thank you, Ms. Thomas. Response?
Yeah, thank you, Mr. Chair. My understanding, and I want Mr. Rose to confirm this, but my understanding is when council allocates these funds to us, they are broken out into different pots of money so that the budgets that were given by our finance group are discrete, and we can't move money between projects. So in the case of a capital project like the sidewalk on the Trans-Canada Highway, that would be a pot of money. And Mr. Rose can confirm that, so we can't mix and match.
Mr. Rose.
Through the chair. So I think just to elaborate on what Ms. Thomas is speaking to, the funds allocated to the TCH project, as an example, would go to that. Whereas when we ask to have funds allocated to our traffic calming internal order, that's actually a program placeholder that we have populated every year to manage traffic calming. And so these funds would go into that pot to enable us to allocate it to specific locations based on reports back to council. We would say, come back and say, we would like to add speed humps or something at various locations. We're going to use funds from this source. And so unfortunately, I can't explicitly state that having the 165 in the traffic calming IO will or will not fulfill all of it, but it is a program that does renew annually. So this will give us an opportunity to take a big step forward with the 3 projects that we've identified. And should we need more, more will become available in 2023. And so based on available resources, staff, and contractor and everything, it's likely that these probably will only hit the ground one by one starting in the fall. And so I think that, I don't think that that there will be a barrier to achieve our end goal by limiting this to 165. So I hope that answered the question, or at least clarified some of our processes.
I see no follow-up from Councillor Hemmons, so I hope that answered the question. I'm seeing yes. Mr. Sims, you had something to add?
Thanks, Chair. I think not to add too much confusion or to try and sell things too hard. I think I thought a little bit of context perhaps. So our annual traffic calming is about a $50,000 budget line item every year, and it was fine for a number of years, and in the last 2 years we've seen quite an acceleration in requests. So we're not going to be able to keep up. So allocating a certain amount allows us to as Mr. Rose said, take a giant leap forward. So that would be the intent, and we can't commit, as he said, that this will solve all of the problems, but we'll try something and we'll move forward as we step through. And as you know, there's a number of other projects sort of waiting in the wings, or other streets that are waiting in the rings. I think similarly with the program as a whole, this started off as just an unallocated fund for council 4 or 5 years ago to start, we'd like to build a sidewalk over here. That's kind of how it started. But in the last 2 years, with the additional funding that council's put into it, it's really accelerated a number of projects that the city's able to do with respect to pedestrian safety. And that's really the guiding principle that we use. Is this improving pedestrian safety? And I think the TCH funding is really largely going to be on that the sidewalk between the mall, or the mall and Extension Road or Cranberry. Just, again, didn't want to sell it too hard, but this, this additional funding has really checked a lot of projects off the list that otherwise would just sort of flounder for a long time.
Thank you, Mr. Sims. So the motion is on the floor. We've had a fair amount of discussion. Yes, I'm well aware that Councillor Bonner wishes to speak, and I will allow him to speak one more time, and then I will be calling the question. Councillor Bonner.
Thank you, sir. And just to follow up to Mr. Rose's comment, so we're adding 165,000 to the line item in our budget of 50,000 for 215,000. But there's we're not actually saying what that money gets used for. That will be up to the discretion of staff to use it as they see fit, and they will obviously, as was said, will come back to us. But it's not specifically going to be finalizing the work that needs to be done on Lost Lake or Departure Bay or the other one that we're talking about?
Mr. Rose.
Through the chair, that's correct. So this money will be used to implement some changes once staff have identified the most effective, and will then be brought back to council for approval. Councillor Hemmons, you're testing my flexibility here. Go ahead.
Thank you for your indulgence, Chair. I just have to ask, we have an upcoming in-camera conversation that I feel could influence this, and I'm wondering if we should consider a deferral until we've had that conversation.
Councillor Hemmons, maybe it's just me, but I could not understand what you were saying.
My apologies. I believe we have an upcoming in-camera conversation that could influence this conversation, and I'm curious if we should delay this decision until after that conversation.
I'll let Mr. Sims attempt an answer on that.
Mr. Chair, I'm not sure that this would, the in-camera discussions that we have in front of us would influence one way or the other this particular motion.
So on that note, I am going to go ahead and call the question. So we are talking about the recommended option A, which has been moved and seconded. We've had lots of discussion. I will ask people to raise their hands. All in favor, please. I see Councillor Armstrong, Councillor Martman, Councillor Thorpe, Mayor Krogh, Councillor Turley. And for the record, those opposed, Councillor Geselbrock, Councillor Bonner, Councillor Hemmons, and Councillor Brown. And math was never my strong suit, but I think that motion just passed. Thanks, Councillor Turley. Let me use this little slide rule I've got on my tie. All right, the motion passes. Thank you very much, Council. Good discussion and good debate, and I think there is something in here which is really going to benefit the community. We might not be happy with every detail, but I think these are good steps forward in improving pedestrian safety. Now, we are at or near the end of the open portion of this meeting. I will check and see if there's anything on the question period. Ms. Gurry says no. I would next ask for a procedural motion to go